Hello, everybody. My name's Tony Cardenas, and this is the Indy Real Estate Market Weekly Update. Today, I have a guest in the house, Carrie Holle with Compass Real Estate here in Carmel, Indiana, that handles a lot of the luxury market, and Greg Cooper with Compass Real Estate. How you guys doing today, Carrie?
Great. Thanks for having me.
We are awesome, and it is so good to be here with you, Tony.
Oh, you always say that, Greg. Well, at least one thing we're not going to talk about until the middle of the show. Maybe chocolate milk later, okay?
Adult chocolate milk only, please.
But what we're getting ready to get into is we want to talk about the luxury market here in the Carmel, maybe Zionsville area of what's going on. We know about the smaller market homes of 350, 450, 550. We know that there's a lot of inventory out there. We know there's been price adjustments, but then again, there are some homes still selling at list because they've been priced right and they're in the right market, the right house. But what I would really like to talk to you two about, one, we're going to touch on Compass later on in the show, how fantastic the company is, but I want to touch on the luxury market, Carrie, of what you're seeing in the market and what your experience now. Doesn't matter what the heck was happening 6 months ago. What's going on now in the Carmel, Zionsville market. And of course, we know that you have a really big one that we'll touch on down in southern Indiana, am I correct?
Yes, Columbus.
So, Carrie, what are you hearing from buyers, clients, sellers about this luxury market when somebody calls you up and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my home for $1.8 million to $2.8 million. What's the feedback you're starting to hear?
Well, the market is still moving for sure. So there are definitely still buyers out there. I would say the main difference that I see today versus 30 days, 60 days ago is that the days on the market has substantially increased in that $1 million plus market. So, it didn't really matter what price point we were talking about over the past 2 years. Houses were selling in a couple days
If they got on the market.
Right, across the board. But now in that $1 million plus market, we are starting to accumulate a little bit of inventory, which is not a bad thing.
No.
We're just the market is regulating, which we needed.
Yeah. I'm dying to ask Carrie a question. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I get this question frequently, and you would be more familiar than anybody with this, people don't realize how many true luxury homes there are in Hamilton County. There's people spending a lot of money on houses in Hamilton County.
Well, we were just talking about this a little bit ago. It used to be where there was a very definite stop at $2 million in central Indiana. We might sell a couple outliers, maybe one or two a year, but $2 million was really kind of the ceiling. Now $2 million is just getting in the game.
Right.
So, we used to say, I have a $1 million buyer. Wow, a $1 million buyer. $1 million gets you maybe what $750 got you pre-COVID.
Right.
So luxury for us has definitely evolved and it's increased. And when somebody says they're looking for a $2 million house, you don't shudder. It's just, it's almost become the norm in this market.
Like you said, a $1 million buyer is almost like a $500,000 buyer 4 years ago.
Really.
4.5 years ago. Am I right?
Yeah. 600, 650, that gets you a production home, which is really interesting because 650 used to get you really
a nice home.
Nice custom home. Not that a production home is not a nice home, but it's just a different caliber of home.
It's a different caliber of home. Look, I live in Sunrise on the Monon. It is a production home no matter what, but Jeff with the company of Sunrise on the Monon, Old Town Group, they do a really, really, really nice job. But at the end of the day, Pulte are building some $1 million homes just on here on the west side of Carmel, and they are. Have you ever sold any of those by any chance?
I haven't, but I know what you're talking about. What's really interesting, and I've had this conversation with you, Greg, is when you travel to other parts of the country, we're very insulated here in central Indiana. And being with Compass, I've been able to learn from exceptional agents all over the country.
Right.
And when we say that our luxury market starts at $750 or $800, in other parts of the country, that is first-time buyer range.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about California.
Chicago.
Absolutely.
Chicago for sure.
Absolutely. So when we talk about $1 million home and people raise their eyebrows, that's still very, very affordable compared to other parts of the country. Incredibly affordable.
Yeah, 2 million is the new 1 million.
It is,
And
without a doubt.
You're right. I mean, and we've heard of, there have been many sales above 2 million, and some. I mean, you have a listing now. Is it 6.9? Is the one
Yes.
you have in West Carmel? I mean, and it's a gorgeous elite home, and yet it's a property that I'm sure there's plenty of interest in at the end result, and somebody's going to end up buying that house, and it's not going to be something that's going to shock anybody.
No, I mean, we've had a couple offers we've been negotiating on with it, but the perception in central Indiana is that $6.9 million is crazy.
And it's not.
And it's not. So we have to, our market has evolved and our way of thinking also has to evolve. And you can't think that prices are coming back down and at some point I'm going to be able to get a $2 million house for $1 million
not gonna
again.
happen.
It's
No.
not, we're
That
not
day's
going
gone.
backwards.
Yeah,
We're not.
the ship has sailed right there.
Right.
But I mean, you know, I think if somebody wants a $1.8 million home, I mean, a $2 million home, I mean, I think they're aggressive enough to offer 1.8. They're probably not going to get it. But at the end of the day, you're right. Those big discounts on these big homes, I think those days are definitely gone.
Well, I do have some numbers reflecting that.
Well, let's talk about them.
Yeah,
when we
so
get to it.
prior to COVID, anything priced above $1 million would sell for 75 to 93% of list price. That was the norm. Absolutely.
For a long time.
For forever.
Since
for
2009
history.
or 10, maybe.
Well, right. Even $1 million plus before the collapse, people were negotiating.
Right.
People weren't coming in. I mean, I've been in this business, it's going on 30 years. I don't ever remember people coming in and paying list price on anything.
No, not a chance.
During my career. And then we look at post-COVID or through COVID,
Right.
post-COVID, and we're at 100 to 125% of list price in
Right.
in the $1 million plus market. That is starting to change a little bit, and people are starting to negotiate on luxury homes again.
Do you not find, though, even in the luxury market, whether it's you can almost draw a parallel, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. If it's $1.7 million and the home is absolutely right for the demands of the market, it might still draw all that money.
For sure.
The first couple of weeks or whatever.
It may get above list.
Right.
The great homes are still going
Right.
with aggressive prices and multiple offers.
Right.
But people have become more realistic. They're not being so crazy on winning a bidding war.
Right.
So we're seeing days on market in that $1 million plus range today, currently. The median, so we throw out the highs and the lows,
Of course.
are around 42 days on market. 42 days on market.
And what was it like 3 and 4 years ago?
Oh, 3 and 4 years ago was probably 90, 120. I mean, it would not be abnormal to be on the market for a year or over a year.
Right, and you're seeing people come down here from other states. I want to talk about the Chicago area right now. It's unbelievable when they come down there and they look at something. They say, "What?" Plus the property taxes. But here, for $1 million, $1.5 million from Chicago, I mean, they think they're getting a gift.
The biggest area that I have people moving here from is California, without a doubt. Sight unseen. Sight unseen.
Yeah.
And people ask me why. Why would people from California move to Carmel, Indiana, sight unseen? And Carmel does a very good job marketing itself
Absolutely
nationally.
it does.
I mean, there is something to it. It's not like they just blindly pointed to a spot on the map and wound up in
Right.
Carmel. Carmel, the city of Carmel has done an excellent job of promoting itself and marketing itself nationally. And we should all be thankful for that because that is only helping increase our property values.
When you look at the amenities of the community and the school system, I mean, people walk down that Monon at 7 o'clock on a summer night on a Saturday, and there's 7-year-olds and there's senior citizens and there's families and there's single people, and it's an all-encompassing area, and people kind of walk down there, and I've been there with people from other parts of the country, and they say, you live in Disneyland.
They call it utopia. They say, "Is this real?" As the street sweeper drives past.
Well, that's-
we're like, "Yep, it's
Well, you
real."
know, it's funny you said this street sweeper right after the parade. 45
Yes.
minutes after the parade, they had the street sweepers out.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. I called Jeff Worrell. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Man, we want it cleaned up."
I saw too. It was crazy. I'm like, they are not messing around.
Right, and Carmel's also known for its biking. I mean, they're starting to do a big push again on biking right now in our community, and it's nice to see the guy that's 65 years old, and then the kid that's 8 years old riding a bike on the Monon or up and down the streets and walking, just like you said. So it's a hell of a community for people to come here that they don't get in California or Chicago.
Right.
land.
Well, one of the things, I'm on the Carmel Plan Commission, which has been a fantastic opportunity. And one of the things that we're very cognizant of, and it's actually in the comprehensive plan, is that we want all of our communities, all of our neighborhoods to be connected. Connectivity is a really important part of
Right.
how we develop and we continue to develop Carmel. So you can ride your bike from the west side of Carmel down to Sun King, or
Absolutely.
it's easy to get around, and people are out running and pushing a stroller and on their bikes, and there are not a lot of communities in the Midwest where they have the ability to do that.
When they connected US 31 and Keystone the way that they did now, it's been 10, 12 years ago now, so that you could ride your bike across Main Street or
Right.
above it. And you could go across Keystone, which you wouldn't have done in 2005 to save your life because you wouldn't have had a life
Oh,
left.
God, no. Right,
You would have
right.
never gone across there. But now, they might trust their 10-year-old to ride to school, to the high school, to a summer program from the east side of Carmel.
Absolutely.
Or if you're in the village of West Clay, they might trust their kid to ride into town because the biking opportunities are safe and they're plentiful.
Well, when my boys were little, they used to connect to the back of our neighborhood and get on the Hagen Burke and take it to the Monon and go meet up Bubs with their friends. And
Absolutely.
I would totally trust that they would be safe. They weren't going to get hit by a car,
Right.
and I wasn't afraid of anybody
Pulling up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's been a really great place to raise a family.
Well, I met a guy at Sun King about 3 months ago, and he actually works at Geico. He goes, I drove my bike over here. And he came in from Kansas City. He goes, oh, my God. He goes, where can you do that? Where can you ride your bike to work at Geico is what, he's from, and then go to Sun King and go home. I mean, you just can't do that.
The things Carrie's been talking about, we've all kind of been collectively discussing. It kind of goes back to, she and I might help people find homes and it might help people sell homes. But what we're really doing is selling community.
Yes.
I mean, we're selling the quality of life, the amenity level. What's your family's life going to be if you were to live in this community?
Right.
Absolutely.
And they make it pretty easy here.
Well, I think the two of us, more so than many, really have hyper-niched ourselves to Carmel.
Right.
And I think it's because both of us, this is our home, and we believe in it. And I've spoken about this before. I made the decision to hyper-niche myself to the Carmel community, and some people said that's crazy. People from Fishers aren't going to call you, and people from Indianapolis aren't going to call you, and they still do. But
Of course they do.
But I decided I wanted to work in Carmel,
Right.
and I stand firm on that decision because I love selling the area.
And it's not slowing down.
Oh, no.
The future development, I mean, the new
future
buildings that are going in, I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to look like. They've done the rejuvenation of the Monon section down by the Palladium in Midtown, which is going to look unbelievable when it's done. And then the next section will be a little further to the north. I mean, it's going to look almost as much different in 10 years as it has in many ways over the last 5 to 7.
Absolutely.
Carrie, what commission are you on here in Carmel?
The Plan Commission.
So you get to see a lot of the insight before it even comes around.
Everything.
I know, and you know what's going to happen. I mean, as soon as Mohawk goes down, okay, this thing's going to be beautiful.
Well, that's the Redevelopment Commission.
Right.
So there are some projects that I see a lot of the commercial and residential development outside of
Absolutely.
the core. But the interesting thing we've been working on this year is we had to write the comprehensive plan for the city of Carmel. And the city rewrites that about every 10 years. So it was really interesting reading what we wrote in the comp plan 10 years ago because life has changed. We communicate differently. We have different vehicles to get around. People aren't just driving a car or riding a bike. They have different modes of transportation. There were so many things, and there's been so much development in the city in the last 10 years that when we wrote the comp plan for the future 10 years, we had to really kind of think outside the box and say, what do we think is on the horizon? What do we think is coming to the city that's going to be important for the future
Absolutely.
of the citizens that we don't, well, listen, when we were in college, we didn't have a cell phone. was a journalism
Thank
major.
goodness.
I didn't even have I had a word processor.
with you there, Greg.
I'm really
So-
grateful there were no cell phones when we were in college.
right.
Because
Oh my gosh,
the evidence
yeah.
has been destroyed since then.
But you think about, to try to predict how the world is going to change in the next 10 years.
Oh, big time.
And so that really speaks to how progressive we try to be as a city.
You go out on the Mona on the evening, and it wasn't this way 3 years ago. A third of the bikes are electric.
Right.
And so those people very easily could ride from Ditch Road on 131st into Midtown because the energy that they're expending is not going to exhaust them, to the
Exactly.
point where they're not going to be able to enjoy themselves. And you can just see it. It's just all the time. It's going. But one of the things I think we appreciate is that the city has the foresight to keep doing things like, the Monon Trail is crowded on a busy evening.
Absolutely.
But they've taken the initiative to spend a whole lot of money and widen that in a very difficult pinch point down there near the Palladium. And I think that just speaks to, we don't do things after it's too late. We try and do them ahead of time, which is, part of the comprehensive plan that you all have been working so hard on.
Yes.
Well, hey, let's talk about the real estate. Let's go to your section first, and let's talk about your notes that you have over here. Let's talk about your market area, and then we're going to go over to the luxury market and get Carrie's stats. What do you got?
Just a little bit of a statistical comparison. Back in March, there was a point where there were 22 houses for sale in all of Carmel, and today, we're over 100. And that's just unheard of. We've had 29 price reductions in the last 7 days. There were no price reductions in March and April. There was how
haven't
much
seen
money
them.
do you have to throw at something to get it bought?
Right.
At one point in March, I remember looking, there were 7 houses east of Keystone for sale. And they were all been for sale for months because they were way overpriced. It wasn't because there wasn't activity in the marketplace. I think that we're going to see, and we are seeing, that the days on the market is increasing. There's no doubt
Absolutely.
about that. We were at 4 days on the market, list to contract at one point, and now we're at 16. That doesn't sound like a huge change, but it is 4x.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that
Right.
is going to make a difference. I still think, and I think it's probably to the surprise of people, what we were talking about a little bit ago, and that is if your home is $350,000 or $2,350,000, if it's a great house and it meets the demands of the market, it's going to sell quick.
Absolutely.
And very close to, if not at list, or even above, because the demand is still there and the financial resources are pouring into our county monthly. It's just, there's so many people that are moving here and driving demand.
I agree. Carrie, what do you got?
Well, I spoke to some of it earlier, but interestingly enough, the inventory in that $1 million plus market is not.
It's not going up.
It's not really going up. So the days on the market is expanding.
Right.
But we're not seeing a lot of inventory.
Why do you think it's changing below $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, but not changing above that? Is there any obvious reason?
Well, we could look at the economy.
Yeah.
I think the luxury buyer is a little more savvy
Right.
and has a
Absolutely.
little, they've got money managers and a lot of money invested, and they're just being cautious.
Right.
Some of the less expensive homes, people have to move.
Right.
People who are buying $1 million plus homes may not have to move unless they're moving here from out of state. And if they're
Exactly.
moving here from out of state, this is a moot point because they've got the money anyway to buy it.
Exactly.
So that could be some of it, although a lot of people in that $1 million plus market are cash buyers.
Yeah, cash buyers don't get affected by higher
They don't
interest
get
rates.
affected by higher interest rates. I can't say it's the rates. I think it's just maybe I don't want to pull a lot of money out of the stock market right now because my portfolio is
They're
way
savvy
down.
buyers, just like you
They're
said.
just- right. So
mean,
I
you-
think
you-
they're just maybe playing the wait and see game until
Absolutely.
we get through a little bit of this.
You think there's a generational issue in terms of there's got to be a lot of boomers that are going to be selling that big house and maybe going somewhere south or having a smaller home in Carmel, maybe a vacation home somewhere. But that doesn't really seem to have happened yet. Or have you seen it?
Well, what's interesting, and I saw somebody make a comment on social media about, you're building all of these apartments in Carmel and they're not occupied, and then
If they only knew.
And Jeff said, I hear that there are a lot of empty nesters moving in them, and no, they're not. That's hogwash. They actually are.
Yes,
They are there.
I can count on two hands in just the past maybe 12 months of clients I have who were at the empty nester stage of their life. Their kids are all gone to college or post-college, and they want to cash out.
Yep.
And they don't want to have to mess with the overhead of
Right.
a house, or they just want to figure out what their next move is.
Well, it's funny you said that because there are some in our building right here that are living here. And I had two people recently, I'm going to say in the last 3 or 4 months, I'm going to look at the condominium market here. And the condominium market, like right across the street, you got Old Town Design Group building them. You got Onyx over
and
here.
East.
Yeah, I mean, all the small ones, all the 500s, they're gone.
They're gone.
And across the street at 827, they're gone.
Right.
Okay, so that is another market that I think people are going to later on buy, less maintenance, empty nesters that get tired of renting. Some of them will end up buying.
We're in the Playfair building as we're recording this, and for those of you who don't know, we're kind of by Cake Bake on the Monon. This is about the best way to describe it, because unless you know how to get here, you're not going to get here. But if you have not driven over here lately, kind of by the fire station in Carmel,
Absolutely,
you're not going to believe the building over here. I mean, it's shocking how much new construction is going up, and they're selling them as fast as they can put them up right now.
I'm telling you, it hasn't slowed down.
The empty nester, comment that you were making, and it's so reinforced. There's a workout facility in this building, and I come every morning, and there's a gentleman who's moved in here. He's one of the pro sports teams in town. He lived in the village of West Clay. Someone knocked on his door. He wasn't for sale. Offered him a ridiculous amount of money, and his wife said, "Okay, give us the money." And they're living in a 2-bedroom in this building.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is some of my clients moved down to the proscenium, and they invited us over to see what it looked like. I don't know when the last time you weren't in a new apartment was, but it is not the old Riverbend Castleton days.
I actually lived there years ago.
So did I. I think we all did.
And I got to tell you, aren't they absolutely beautiful?
I mean,
It's kind of an LA look.
I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So I'm thinking, if I'm at an age where I don't need this house anymore and I just don't want the overhead, I don't want the maintenance, that's not a bad deal. Wait for the prices to come down a bit in Florida, because I do believe there are some areas in this country where they will go backwards. Wait for prices to come down a little bit. Buy a nice place there. Keep a little place here so you have a home base. It's not a bad idea until you figure out what you want to do here to just rent for a little bit.
And the people who are moving, some of the empty nesters who are moving into like the building we're in now in the Playfair, they've got an apartment overlooking a Chris Kindle market for 45 days.
Right.
They come here and they don't have to mow the grass. And now you say, well, those people, they're hiring somebody. Yeah, but somebody's got to manage all of that.
Right.
So it's time and energy. So they come here and they don't have to do any of that. They just get here and they walk down to Sun King or whatever. They walk to coffee and,
And they get to look at the farmer's market, which kind of looks like you're walking in the Nordstroms or Saks Fifth Avenue for a farmer's market. I mean, we have a very, very nice farmer's market.
You're not in
here.
Indiana when you're in that market.
It's in the top 10 of the best farmers markets in the United States of America. But anyway, all right, Carrie, thank you very much for all the information, Greg, today. Carrie, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, can you tell them the name of your company, your phone number, and your email address, if you would, please?
Yes, I am. I have the Carrie Holle Group, which is on Main Street, right next door to Monterey. If you haven't been there, go.
Yeah.
Love it. My phone number is 317-339-2259, and it's Carrie at the Carrie Holle Group, HOLLE group.com.
And that's with Compass Real Estate, right?
That I am with Compass Real Estate.
And
yes.
Greg,
Well,
how do they get a hold of you?
I'm with the Cooper Group, but I'm here in the Playfair building on the main floor, and you can just walk in and see us anytime. We're usually here 24/7. No, obviously during the week. But Tony, I love to be texted overnight. First of all, our website is coopergroupcompass.com, and you can call or text 24/7, 317-441-7166.
Okay, everyone, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.